I will show you how to make bread without a bread mixer or maker, the old-fashioned way, the way Grandma used to make it. And it's not hard, so you don't need to be intimidated by it. Just a few simple techniques and you'll get it down. It'll be really easy and your family will love it. I'm going to demonstrate 4 loaves, again, because that's what I usually make. In the packet that you can buy one for 2 or 4 loaves, but I'll just do 4 because that's what I'm used to. So this is 4 cups of hot water. Just as hot as you can get it from the tap. You don't need to boil it or anything like that. And then we have a 1/2 cup of oil. And I always measure my oil first. That's a 1/2 cup. And then I measure the honey or molasses or a combination of both. I always do that in the same cup that I did the oil in so that it comes out very easily. So a 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of honey, and now we're going to use a tablespoon of salt. And bread seems to need salt. You would really notice bread without salt. And so, unless you have a good reason not to use salt, I would recommend that you make sure you put that in. Okay, so we've got our oil and so forth. Now we're going to add about 1/2 of our flour, which will be about 6 cups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the way Grandma used to do it was just start beating it with the spoon at this point. But I use my mixer for the very first part just to mix it up really good. After I've just mixed it up really good, I'm going to add my yeast. There's no reason to dissolve your yeast ahead of time in liquid. It dissolves just fine in this liquid. Just make sure you use a good instant yeast. And also with your yeast, keep it in the refrigerator to keep it fresh. And don't use it past its expiration date because it really won't work as well. And you won't be as happy with the results. So 2 tablespoons of yeast. Mix that up again. Okay, so at this point I'm going to quit using my mixer and start using my wooden spoon. So I have a nice large wooden spoon. And now I'm going to add the packet of special ingredients. And again, I'll have the exact proportions, but it's wheat gluten, oat bran, wheat bran, flax, some triticale flour, some soy flour, just a mixture of some really good ingredients that give it a higher protein content, as well as a higher fiber content. So at this point, you just start mixing with your spoon. And when it gets too sticky or too stiff for you to mix with your spoon, then you get your hands into it, and that's the fun part. So we've got about 6 cups of flour, about 2 cups of our ingredients. That's 8. This is 9. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 cups of flour in because I know that it will take that. Just start mixing. That's almost getting to the point where I'm going to have to get my hands into it. I like to go as far as I can before I do. Okay, now we're going to turn it on to our wooden board and we'll start kneading it by hand. Now you can also knead on your countertop if you don't have a wooden board, that's just fine. Since I have a wooden board, I like to use it, and also the flour just kind of works into it a little bit better. So I'm just going to collect my dough here with my hands. Okay, I'm just going to turn it out onto my board. And I've got 10 cups of dry ingredients, flour. I'm just going to start kneading it. Bring one edge over, fold it in, make a quarter turn, fold it in, make a quarter turn. Now, I can tell this is going to need a little more flour. So it's a little bit sticky underneath, so I'll put a little bit more flour there. Your bread dough is in between a very soft roll dough and a stiff pizza dough. You want it to not be sticky, but you also don't want it to be too stiff. So I'm putting some underneath there and a little on top, and we'll just knead it in, or push it in, quarter turn, pick it up, push it in. This is really great to take out your frustrations, or you can put on some music and pretend like you're dancing, or do whatever you want to do. But it's fun, doesn't take very long, and isn't very hard to do. So a little bit more flour, because I'm sticking there. Now this is, I think, about the right consistency. Might be a little bit on the sticky side still. As you can see, it's sticking to my hands. So maybe we'll do a little bit more flour. And maybe a little more underneath. And sometimes you just need to take it off your wrists. Now, I'm going to continue to do this for 10 minutes. Now, that might seem like a long time, but it goes pretty quickly. And what you need to do actually is set your timer. You need to do this for 10 minutes. With white flour, white bread, you don't need to do it quite so long, but you need to do it this long because it needs to develop the gluten. And it just needs to be thoroughly kneaded. In the bread mixer, we also knead it for 10 minutes. So there's a certain elasticity that you need to develop within the bread. And I'll show you what that looks like when we're done. But I'm just going to continue to do this for 10 minutes. And I think we've got a good consistency. It's not sticking to the board excessively. It's not sticking to my hands excessively. If it starts to stick a little bit, you know, just a little bit of flour down there helps it. At this point, we're not wanting to add too much flour at any one point. If we need to add a little flour just to prevent the dough from sticking, then we do that. But I'm not going to be dumping a cup of flour in at this point. Okay. You can watch that kneading process. It's very easy. Just use the heels, your hands, quarter turn, push down, and you can put as much muscle power into it as you want to. This isn't something that you have to have a light touch with. This is something that you want to get down and just really knead it. And I promise you, you'll be pleased with the results, and your family will love it, and you'll say, I did it by hand. No bread maker. Okay, I've kneaded this for 10 minutes. As you can see, it has a smooth texture. It has a good elasticity to it. Just has a good feel to it. And so now it's time to put it into our loaves. And so I planned on this making 4 loaves of bread. So we'll just cut it into 4 sections. Use a knife that has a straight edge and not a serrated edge. That will work better. Now after your bread is cooked, then you want to use a serrated knife to cut your hot cooked bread. But the dough, use a straight edge. Okay, now there's lots of different methods. I shouldn't say lots, there's a few different methods for forming loaves. And I've done several. So this is the one that I think is the best. So, some of them, they say use your rolling pin and roll it out into a rectangle and then roll it. But this is just as easy to me. I just start kneading each individual loaf. And I kind of start moving it into a a loaf shape. As you can see, it's kind of oblong there. And so then I just kind of roll it back and forth. You saw the way I did that. And then I just tuck the ends under and just form it like that. And that's my loaf. And so as you can see, it doesn't really take long. You just push it out so it starts to be lengthened, like that. Okay, so then I kind of roll it. And that's my loaf. And you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just because it's going to raise and it's going to fill your pan, and so it's going to be fine. But you want to try to make it so that it's even. It's not thick on one side and thin on the other side. Or I think you'll get the point of it as you work with your dough. Now, with this bread dough, you don't need to have two risings or raisings. But you can if you want. Before you form it in loaves, you can just put it in your bowl and you can let it raise for about 45 minutes, and then you can punch it down and form them into loaves. And you might want to try that and see how the texture is different. The texture is a little different when you do it that way, and you may prefer it. So, okay, now we'll wait for probably 30 minutes to put it in the oven, and then we'll bake it. It's now time for us to put our bread in the oven. I forgot to mention before, and this is important, make sure that you cover your bread with just a light dishcloth, not too heavy. The way that you can tell that your bread is ready to go in the oven is if when you push your finger in, it leaves a slight indentation. Okay? Now these are ready to go in the oven. You bake them at a 350-degree oven for about 30 to 35 minutes, depending on your oven. You may need to go a little bit longer. We want to make sure that the bottoms are nice and brown because we don't want them to be doughy in the middle. You want to bake them in the center of the oven. That's important. Don't stack them so there's some on a higher level and some on a lower level. They need to be in the middle of the oven. Okay, we'll put them in the oven now. Okay, we're now going to check to see if our bread is done. And the way that you can tell if they're done is if they have kind of a hollow sound and they're a nice golden brown on the top. And then I'll take one out. Let's see. It has a nice golden brown on the bottom, so they're done. It's important that you take the bread right out of the bread pans. Otherwise, they will get soggy bottoms. If you leave your bread in the pan, the steam will escape and actually create very wet bottoms of your bread if you don't take it out. So it's a good idea also to put it on a rack, not just flat on the counter. Again, you'll get the soggy bottom thing. If you don't have a rack, even a dishcloth is better than straight on the counter. I put mine on their sides, and the main reason I do that is so I can fit 4 on my rack. Now you are ready to call your family together and get out the butter and the honey and the jam and sit down and just have a feast.